Another group living in this region were the Hebrews. The term Hebrew is often associated with the idea of a nomad or wanderer, and in their earliest history the Hebrews did in fact live a nomadic lifestyle. They survived by herding flocks of sheep and goats, moving through the deserts and semi-arid lands that bordered Syria Palestine. Later, Hebrew traditions preserved stories of this early period in the book of Genesis. While we have no way to verify the historical accuracy of these stories in detail, it is important to note that nomadic pastoralists still live in this region today, and their way of life closely resembles what is described in the early Hebrew texts. Hebrew society was organized around the extended family, led by a patriarch. The patriarch was the senior male figure and exercised authority over his sons, their wives, and their children. He made decisions for the group and led it as long as he lived. When a patriarch died, his sons typically separated, forming their own extended families and moving on independently. Because the environment they lived in was harsh and resource poor, these families had to remain relatively small and mobile. Most of the time, families lived apart from one another. Occasionally, however, families who believed themselves descended from a common ancestor would ally for purposes of warfare or mutual defense. The Hebrews appear to have lived primarily as nomads until around 1200 BCE. At that point, they began to move out of the desert and into the lands of southern Canaan, seeking territory on which they could settle permanently. They were one of many groups on the move during the period of instability that followed the collapse of Bronze Age civilizations. By this time, the Hebrew people had developed into a loose federation of 12 tribes, each believed to descend from one of the 12 sons of a patriarch named Israel. For this reason, they were sometimes called Hebrews, and sometimes the children of Israel. They shared a common language, a sense of shared ancestry, and, most importantly, a common religious tradition. At first, however, they had no centralized government and no permanent political leader. Their social and political organization remained loose and decentralized. The one institution that bound the tribes together was religion. The Hebrews were united primarily through their worship of a single god, and religious leadership was overseen by a high priest. This religious authority, however, carried no direct political power. Each tribe, and even each family, largely managed its own affairs. Occasionally, a particularly capable military leader would emerge and temporarily unite several tribes during times of crisis or warfare. These leaders were believed to be supported by the Hebrew God, and for this reason they were followed voluntarily. In Hebrew tradition, they are referred to as judges, a term that can be misleading. These figures were not judges in the legal sense, but rather charismatic war leaders or generals. Their authority lasted only as long as the conflict itself. Outside of warfare, these leaders held no permanent power, and once the crisis passed, the tribes returned to their independent ways. For roughly 2 centuries, the Hebrew tribes fought intermittently with the Canaanites in an effort to secure land for permanent settlement. Progress was slow. Many Canaanite communities were organized into fortified city-states, which were far stronger and more cohesive than the loosely organized Hebrew tribes. As a result, the Hebrews did not immediately gain control of the entire region. Instead, early Israelite settlement was gradual, uneven, and often confined to hill country and less desirable land, while many Canaanite cities remained independent for generations.